It's now time to move on over to Fresh Perspectives. The host here is Dr. Sarina Siddhanti. This week, Dr. Siddhanti brings onto our screen some new, fresh faces with a presentation of New Fresh Outlook of Life. Come on close, let's join her.
Namaste. Welcome to Fresh Perspective. I am Sarina Siddhanti, and this show is a new one that we have put together to shed light on ideas and issues that touch our lives day to day as parents, as professionals, as citizens of this country, and especially those of us who come from Indian origin. Today's show not only would talk about how the youth think about marriage or other issues, but I brought together three young adults who are very dynamic in their own way of thinking, and they bring their perspectives on how we think about marriage and how that has evolved. We have Rohan, Sarina, and Vyomika. Sarina comes from San Francisco, and she is working in a high-tech firm, and she graduated from college in 2010. Rohan, who graduated this year in 2012, comes to us from Boston, and he's working in consulting. And we have Vyomika, who is in DC, working as a journalist and is graduated in 2012 as well. 2010, she's a graduate from college. So with that, I would like to take it from there, and hopefully at the end of it, we will all feel that we read a new book and learned new ideas from the young adults.
Thank you for that introduction. Hello, viewers, and welcome to the young adult version of Fresh Perspectives. My name is Rohan.
I'm Sarina. And I'm Vyomika.
And today we're going to be addressing the topic of marriage. In the Indian American community, marriage is an often talked about subject. We have at Indian parties, when you're getting married, do you have a boyfriend? It's a deep part of our culture. And we'd like to explore some of the deeper issues within marriage today. So I want to start us off by just getting us into the flow of conversation and talking about what are the big changes between our parents' generation and our generation, the generation that is born here, in terms of how we view marriage and what the perspectives are. What do you think, Vyomika?
I think a major thing that goes into play is age. Suddenly you're out of college, you're working, and they go, oh, you're of marriageable age now. Isn't this a big part of your life? Isn't this something you're concerned about? And I think it's funny for me because I've never been defined by my age,
right.
And I don't define myself by my age, and so it's so funny that has suddenly become the most important factor in this discussion. And so I think that is a major difference, because age was a big criteria that this person is now, 23, 24, 25 of marriageable age.
Right.
And I think for my parents, I know they're looking at me and saying, she's not really developed yet. She still has other priorities. And they're seeing a much more, I think, broader perspective than just my age.
Right.
Yeah, I want to go off of Vyomika, the point that you just made about looking at other things or what your other developmental priorities are. I think that's becoming more and more true, and I can speak to that as a woman who just graduated 2 or 3 years ago from college and facing sort of the same pressures and looking at the trajectory of where I think my life is going and saying, look, I have these 3 different priorities, whether it's to go to graduate school, to develop my career, or to broaden my social life. And it's not necessary that marriage fits into one of those boxes. And I think the more that women especially, but males as well, start to look at their life in all these different buckets and developing each one of them before you have a family, it pushes back the age that we think about marriage.
I think it's also less of like a checklist. Like, okay, I've got my degree, check. I got a job, check. Husband is not a checked item. It's much more of like something that I'm working toward if I find someone. What do you think? Is it a checklist thing for you?
I don't think it's a checklist for me, and definitely not for my friends as well. But something else I want to bring up is the fact that there's a different type of social pressures or expectations, or even the way we think about it ourselves between girls and guys. Definitely in the Indian American community. We've come from a culture where girls are sort of expected, the pressure is on them in a way, right? And guys,
Definitely.
The pressure it's much less. We feel that way.
I agree
I
with
want
that.
to know what you guys think, because I can tell you from my perspective, I don't feel the pressure at all. Never have. I have friends of varying ages, so I'm just graduated from college, and I have friends all the way up till 30, I would say, and we don't feel that way. And even I have friends who've had girlfriends for years who are 28, 29, who still don't feel the pressure to get married. Now, would that script be flipped if you were the girl, in that relationship who's been married for a couple years? How does that work?
Yeah, I think that's a super interesting point that is very related to dating in our community. So I think historically, the way I've understood it at least, is that for males it's been more acceptable to see several different females before you get married, whereas it's only now becoming more and more regular to realize that the girls in our community are also dating, are also seeing what they like by looking at lots of different, not lots necessarily, but a few different getting to know, different relationships to decide what works best for you.
And I think this is another thing that is different from our parents' generation, is that we grew up in a society where people date. They go out a couple of times, they go, hey, this is a cool person, I want to spend more time with them. It's much more organic as opposed to that end goal of getting married. And so my grandmother always laughs when we tell her that we're dating people, because she says, you're not doing anything, you're just failing to get married. And it tells you a lot about that perspective. That's the goal, is to get married. And so it is interesting when we're dating, because I think it is sort of not just a culture clash that we grew up in this society where that's what you do when you're a 20-something, there is no rush to get to that finish line of marriage, while for our parents and in the community, that is the goal. That's why you do this.
I think the concept of boyfriend and girlfriend is still very foreign to the Indian American community. So when you say, oh, my boyfriend's going to come over for dinner tonight, you don't hear that a lot. You hear oh, my friend he or my friend she's going to come over. Oh, and your parents may say, oh, who are you hanging out with? Who's that girl you're hanging out with? The whole concept of you can have one boyfriend for a year and a half and then break up and then have another boyfriend or have a girlfriend, that is just not a very casual conversation that we're used to having.
And do you think that the fact that that's not a casual conversation we're used to having is very much related to the fact that many of our parents had arranged marriages, or were more in that construct of, you don't necessarily see several people, you see one person and then that's the end goal, as Vyomika, you were saying before?
I think it's a matter of risk and reward, too. To a certain extent, they don't want us to put ourselves out there and get our hearts broken, Right. They're looking out for us in that way. It's a very instinctual thing to protect your child. But I do think that, I'm learning about myself constantly in everything that I do. And being in a relationship or dating or, just being in that sort of more casual but still committed circumstance is another avenue for me to learn about myself, learn about what I want in a partner, learn about how I'm going to work out these issues. And I don't know.
It's hard to pin it down.
Yeah.
It's hard to pin it down, and I think that it is definitely, it's not a causal relationship, but there is a correlation between that arrangedness and sort of the lack of conversation about the boyfriend-girlfriend thing we have here. I want to throw out some statistics to you guys and to our viewers out there watching at home. We have some statistics here. 71% of Indian Americans are married, as compared to 59% of Asian Americans and 51% of U.S. adults. One more I have for you is that 64% of Indian Americans say that having a successful marriage is the number one most important thing in their lives, right? As compared to 54% of Asian Americans and 34% of all Americans.
That's very interesting.
So we definitely place a very high priority on marriage and relationships. So I can see how that would feed into not wanting to have, one boyfriend and then another one and then finally figure out who you marry. Find that one and you're committed to them and you move forward. Something else I want to kind of get your ideas, get your thoughts on is the Indian to Indian relationship, right? So, most of our parents are married to someone else that is Indian. We have those pairings that way, and that's how it's been. And some of us, we may think that, it's way more open, our generation, we're open to anything, and we could. I want to get your thoughts on that. The statistic I have here is between Indian Americans married between 2008 and 2011, 86% of them were married to another Indian. That's pretty high. So I want to kind of gauge your thoughts on that. Do you guys think that in today's day and age, you have to marry an Indian? Does it feel taboo when you're dating someone and he's not Indian? And I'll speak for myself later as well. If you're dating someone who's not Indian, can you see something long-term in that relationship?
I think we have to ask, Rohan, to answer the question that you're talking about right now, we have to ask why there's been a historical either pressure or trend towards marrying other Indians. And I think that goes to something you actually also said earlier, about a higher percentage of Indian Americans saying marriage is their number one priority.
Right.
The reason for that is more so the creation of a family unit and a community in the end of the day. And that has led to the pressure to be with other Indian people because you feel that that will help foster the kind of community that either you grew up in or you want to recreate.
Right.
But I have seen more and more in my own family I have a lot of cousins marrying people of all different races and being exceptionally happy, just as people who have married Indians. And the more my parents, and frankly I, have seen a lot of successful community building around interracial marriages, the more openness I've seen to that concept.
Well, and here's the thing. Marrying an Indian person comes with no guarantees either. You know, there is no guarantee that just because the person I marry will be Indian that he's going to love my parents and he's going to love my grandparents.
That'll be a wonderful life.
He'll be a great,
right.
nice Hindu Brahmin boy. Like, there are no guarantees like that. And so I think this is another thing that is sort of evolving, being the second generation, is that we are looking at whole people. If we're dictating who we're going to marry, then ideally I'm going to look for someone who wants to travel, who speaks many, you know, there's a different criteria for what I'm looking for as opposed to the skin color. I will say, though, it would be really ideal and probably totally cliche-ish to be like, oh, I don't care about skin color. Of course it's a factor.
Right.
We can't deny it. I think there is an understanding of, you know, your culture. I want...
Your background, where you come from. It's an understanding of
what
each
you
other.
want, how you want to raise your children, things
Right.
like that. And that is going to be a huge part of how I choose a partner.
Right.
And it would be...
And in the ideal world, you could find both things, right? You could see someone having that similar background and then maybe also sharing all these other values, but it's not going to be just one or the other.
I will say, though, for myself, I've never dated an Indian. I think I would be surprised if I ended up marrying someone Indian. Sure. And that's not like that's just how the cookie has crumbled so far.
Yeah, and it boils down to personal choice.
Yeah.
And we're lucky that we are in a culture where we can date many different types of people, and also that the Indian American culture has come far enough that we have, even in our own families, people marrying people of different races and ethnicities. So yeah, it was lovely to talk to both of you today. I'm glad we all got to have a conversation. To our viewers out there, thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and we really hope that we were able to offer you a fresh perspective today on marriage and sort of how the young adults and what they feel about that. Thanks again for watching, thanks for having it. Sarina, Vyomika, once again, I'm Rohan. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Hope you enjoyed that nice, lively discussion. And for some of us who have seen this evolution of what it means to be married and what the challenges are that we are all facing and would like to know about what our youth is facing, that was a very interesting discussion. Thank you. And thank you for joining, and I hope to see you next time. And please send us your comments or any kind of ideas that you have about this show to freshperspectives@gmail.com. Hope to hear from you and see you next time. Namaskar.